All right, we go to Egypt now, where the country's first democratically elected president has been ousted. Fireworks erupted in Tahrir Square as the news spread yesterday. This morning, Mohamed Morsi is under house arrest, and now President Barack Obama has ordered an immediate review of all U.S. aid to the country. For more on the power move and its impact on U.S. relations, we're joined again by Aziz Abu Sarah from the Center for World Religions, Diplomacy, and Conflict Resolution at George Mason University. Somehow, yesterday when you were here, I knew we would see you again today, and indeed we do.
And my predictions were right.
Your predictions were right. Yeah, very good. Now, let me ask you this, because if you haven't been following this closely, the question that I think comes to mind is, okay, wait a minute. They elected a president a year ago. They didn't like him. Aren't you supposed to vote him out of office, not have him removed by the military?
Yes, normally that's true. However, I was listening to President Morsi's speech before he became a president, and he was a candidate. Mm-hmm. And he was asked a very specific question. He was asked, if tomorrow you are elected and a few million people go down in the street and say, go home, what would you do? And he said, I will go home right away.
Wow.
That was his answer,
wow.
And he predicted it apparently as well.
Okay.
So, yes, you're right. Normally it would go through the ballot. But imagine in America here, and maybe this is why it's hard for us to understand in Egypt. If you have a third of the American population out on the streets protesting against any president, if you have over 100 million people, and some say even more in Egypt, maybe 120, 130 million if you compare it in population, out in the street protesting, would any American president be able to rule after that? It's hard to imagine, right. And that's what happened in Egypt. You had, some say, about 30-some million people out in the streets. This was another revolution. And so it became impossible for Morsi to lead anymore because he lost the trust of the people. He banked on the fact that the Islamic Brotherhood has enough foot soldiers on the ground, and they didn't. Very few Brotherhood people came out in comparison with the people who were against him.
What do we know about the new interim president?
We know very little about him. We know he's a judge. He's been a judge for almost 40 years or more than 40 years. He was the second person in charge in the Supreme Court or the Constitutional Court in Egypt. And we don't know much about his political affiliations. He did speak about, he had already his first speech about that he's going to respect the law and he's going to appoint a new government. He's only an interim. He hailed the Egyptian people for being great and people united. Who want freedom and want being united. But we don't know much about him. And he has a tough mission. Establishing rule of law and so on. He's got a tough mission on his hands. What
timetable are we looking at before new elections can be held? That takes some time.
We don't know yet, and I think it's much better to delay it. Going quickly to elections, which is what they tried to do last time, it's trying to get everything quickly. It doesn't work that well. They did the parliamentary elections last time, and then they canceled the results. And so I think they need more time to figure out a better way to move on. And having the Chief Justice, head of the government, is going to probably help to reestablish the system. Now, Egypt today is more ready, actually, for elections than a year ago, because after Mubarak fell, there was no parties to actually compete. There was only the Brotherhood and everybody else scrambling to get together and saying, what are we going to do? Today, there are established parties. There are different groups. You know, even the more right of the Brotherhood, Islamic group, An-Nur, were part of the revolution against the Brotherhood. So they are different groups now that can compete.
I want to ask you two more questions. First off, the U.S. reaction to this, and the president says, okay, we're going to have to look at the aid that we're providing. Egypt needs that aid. It puts the U.S. in a tough position. We supported the democratic process. Now it seems that we kind of have to support the military ouster. President being very careful not to use the word coup.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's very important, because if he uses the word coup, it complicates things on our aid to Egypt. Look, it caught us by surprise in the U.S. We've been very slow in getting what really happening in the Middle East, and often are caught by surprise, whether the first revolution or this one. We didn't see the Egyptian government with the Brotherhood as allies. Actually, President Obama was asked about that, and he said, well, they're not our allies, but they're not our enemies, and he didn't know where to put President Morsi. So we're not too upset that the Brotherhood government is not there anymore.
Sure.
But there is concerns about where the country is going. Now, we work with allies and friends who are not democratic as well, and I think this is trying to figure out and buying time and saying we are serious about democratic change in the Middle East and we're not happy with military being involved. But in the long run, I really doubt that we will actually do any moves to change that. We need Egypt on our side, and we need the Egyptian army to be on our side. The aid we give to Egypt, by the way, doesn't go so much to the people. Right. It's mainly to the army. 80% of the weapons Egypt buys from us goes from the aid we give to them.
Well, we're out of time. My apologies to our producer. If you can give me a short answer to this, what happens to Morsi now?
He's under house arrest. He could, if there's a negotiation, get out. If not, he could go to prison. Remember, in the revolution time, he was actually in prison, and he got out, and there's a court case against him because he was never cleared from prison.
All right. Aziz Abu Sarah from George Mason University. Thanks for coming in. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Stay